Part of the way you embrace the community is you embrace your associations because everybody is a stakeholder. The amount of force that is used or deadly force that is used, it's such a micro, but those are the only ones that get mainstream media attention.
Welcome back to Internal Affairs, a police podcast here with the IA guy, the host. Today, I had to bring you Texas again. And we met, actually, he has a podcast. He's a co-host of the Blue Grip podcast. His name is Clint. Clint's a really good dude. And we just, I actually got a hold of his partner, Tyler, and told him, hey, man, I got this podcast, and I'm this IA guy from California that would love to come down and have that conversation in Texas. And so I did. And you know what? I had to return the favor. So without further ado, man, I got to get a hold of, let's get Clint on board. Hey, thanks for showing up, man. You're Code 6.
I'm glad to be here. I wish I could take the weather back to Texas with me. This is amazing.
We were talking about that yesterday, right?
Yep, it's amazing.
Yeah, compared to, wasn't it one point where Texas, and I always refer to this, but it was like 30 degrees for like 3 months, and it was so cold that the pipes were frozen, and there was like no light, no hot water.
Yeah, it was horrible. There was no electricity for 30 days, and snow on the ground, and we had Snowmageddon, and then a few months later, we'll have 30 days of 100 plus, and this is amazing. This is awesome.
Yeah, but you got to go back to God's country.
I do, but I brought you some Texas.
Oh, man, look at that. See what we got here. Oh, man.
For a kit, if you may wear.
Yes.
Our brothers over at Bridging the Divide podcast at Dallas PD.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Texas Fraternal Order Police Challenge coin.
We were just discussing that. I got to have a ball cap. That ball cap is on for the next episode.
And a little bit of
the shirt, man.
A little bit of Team PA.
I love it.
Little Team PA.
Thanks,
swag,
brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate
Brought
that.
a little
man.
Texas to California.
You had to. And you know what? Now we have to do a process of elimination who we're going to boot out of the challenge coin cabinet, but we'll figure that out. Hey, thanks for all this. Thanks for coming down. You know, we're kind of joking around. It's Clint. I actually said Clint McNear, but it's McNear. Is that correct?
No relation to the quarterback.
To Aaron McNair.
Aaron McNair, no relation.
Yeah.
We do favor each other. We're both athletic and good looking.
You're that talented.
But no relation.
No quarterback in your life before you actually went to the Marine Corps? No, you're a hoorah.
Yeah, no. I played a little football. I was never a quarterback.
Okay.
I was never talented, good looking enough, or coordinated enough to be a quarterback.
Awesome.
In my mind, maybe, but not in real life.
Right. And I just gave you half of the introduction here because we will talk about your podcast that I was, lucky to show up, and I really appreciate you taking me in. And we had this really good conversation about all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
And also you work for TMPA.
Yep.
Right.
TMPA, Texas Municipal Police Association. I'm a work in the field as a field services supervisor. Mm-hmm. We've got reps all over the state and supporting cops.
Yeah. And speaking of cops, just yesterday when we were having dinner, I had no clue there was 2,800 agencies in the state of Texas.
About 80,000 police officers and about 2,800 police agencies in Texas.
Wow. And you recently became the president of Texas FOP.
Got elected at conference this year as president of Texas FOP and wearing a couple of hats, but I'm honored to serve those that are protecting us. That's my new passion after retiring as a cop is continue to support cops.
And speaking of protecting and supporting cops, well, let's get to it, man. You know what? You came down to IA, right? Now you're back in IA land. I'm sure you're not going to share. Which brings me to my first segment of the episode of this, this conversation we're going to have isn't it, don't you ever wonder why IA is so, I hate to even use the word hated, because we're the dark side, or we're just like this evil entity. What do you think that is?
I think we were chatting about it last night, and I think it depends on agencies. I think there's a lot of agencies that do it very, very well, because it's not going to be popular for people to hear, but IA is necessary. We have to take care and police ourselves. But I think it can be abused. I think especially in organizations where the leader of that organization is a political figure, oftentimes at sheriff's departments. I think it can be weaponized. I think it can be misused. And so I think it gets a bad rap, kind of like the police do. But it's necessary, and I think when done right, it's done very effectively. And a lot of the community don't understand, police do a very good job of policing ourselves. We discipline, terminate, prosecute, unfortunately, in some cases. We do police ourselves well, contrary to what the community believes. And IA is a part of that.
Yeah. Would you agree with me that when we start talking about transparency, we really don't have that much transparency within? Because the public doesn't really know exactly how we investigate misconduct. What do you think?
I think it's yes, and I don't think it's ignorance is not the right word to use, but because they don't know, they think maybe it doesn't even occur, and sometimes
or we're covering up for them.
Correct. And a lot of times you don't hear about it. If an officer gets a day off, or if an officer does some sort of misconduct, it's never heard of. It's not publicized, but that doesn't mean that it's not occurring.
Right. And since I'm taking you back to your days in Garland, right?
Yep.
Garland PD, baby, a.k.a. Inglewood, or equivalent to the Wood.
Yep. A friend of mine retired. My supervisor retired from Inglewood PD, and my agency in Inglewood Sound, back when Inglewood, before they're kind of remodeling and redoing in the new arena, and but back when it was the Wood, that's pretty much the agency that I retired from in Texas, the equivalent. It was sporty.
Yeah, GPD, man. What I was also alluding to the fact that even though there's a lot of public complaints being made against cops, the public doesn't really seem to really care as well, because they're not calling you a couple of months later saying, hey, Sarge, what happened with that complaint that I made?
Yeah, or they call in, fire the shot, and never follow, to your point, never follow up again. And sometimes there's a reason behind it, and sometimes it proves that maybe there wasn't veracity to the complaint. You don't know, but certainly the serious ones are the true ones we want to ensure we follow up with.
Before we do the trip down memory lane, I know you and I were speaking about you were a jailer before you actually started at Garland PD. Let me ask you this: what was your impression of internal affairs when you first became a cop, if you can recall?
So, my grandfather was in law enforcement. My dad was in law enforcement. I grew up with cops in my house every weekend, and that's just was my life. So I wasn't scared growing up, or I didn't believe the big bad internal affairs. However, my first interaction with internal affairs as a jailer gave me some battle scars. Dating a girl, we break up, and the next thing I know, internal affairs is calling me in with some wildly outlandish accusations, and treated me pretty much like a convict through the process. And so that was scary, and probably left a bad taste initially. But leaving there, going to the agency that I eventually worked and retired for, they did it very well. They vetted them, and they treated officers with respect through the process.
Just to make sure we have a complete understanding that that complaint that was made against you you were completely exonerated.
Completely
It was
exonerated.
unfounded, never occurred.
Yeah, did not occur. In fact, they refused to even give a statement of any of the facts that they were alleging.
Yeah. Isn't that true saying? Is it a booze, women, and forgot what else gets you in trouble always?
It will definitely get you in trouble. Yes.
Boobs and beers is what they say, right?
That's right.
Now, as you move forward into your in your career in Garland, and I know you just mentioned the reflection of internal affairs was a positive one. Can you kind of share What was it like in terms of the perception of IA in Garland? If there was a negative one or even a
No,
positive
there
one?
wasn't a negative one at Garland, and I was very, very. I could not be more blessed to have worked at the agency I did, because the community supported the police. We did aggressive police action. I mean, we chased till the wheels fell off. We put people in jail. And the citizens supported it. They wanted it. We did it professionally. And when complaints came in, they were vetted, which they need to do. They were vetted. And if on the surface they appeared to be outlandish, not true, they were dismissed.
Yeah.
If there was facts that needed to be investigated, they were investigated, or they were investigated at the supervisor level as a supervisor inquiry. And they would look into it and realize, nah, there's nothing here, or it's a training issue.
Now, when you were in Garland PD, tell me about the perception of internal affairs. And I know you said it was a positive one, but did you know about? I guess a better question would be is when someone had an IA in Garland PD, they're like, everybody know about it?
Yeah, probably at times. Because half the time they were either so crazy and false
Right.
that people would hear about them,
Uh-huh.
or the officer did something so stupid that people would hear about it. But they did a very professional job of not every mistake somebody makes is a discipline or terminating offense.
Right.
You know, sometimes it's a good thorough butt chewing,
Yeah.
or it's some remedial training. My second day cut loose from training. We didn't ride two-man. I'm riding by myself. Just really excited to be in a police car by myself. And I'm the police, you know. And I look over, and there's an old white guy shooting me the finger. And before I didn't even realize I did it. Apparently, I shot him the finger back. And he drives down the road, and about 30 seconds later, my lieutenant calls me on the radio, 30 to 33, can you go to a call box? So he answers, and he said, are you driving squad car such and such? I said, yes, sir, I am. Did you just shoot a citizen the finger? Yes, sir, I did. He goes, why? I said, I don't know. I was driving down the street, minding my own business. I looked over, he's shooting me the finger. He goes, oh, he was. He left that part out. And I said, no, I shouldn't have done it. And it was a reflex. I didn't even realize I'm not used to driving around in police cars. I'm brand new here. And he goes, but he shot you the finger first. I said, yeah, yes. And I shouldn't have done it back, but I did. He's like, well, he left that detail out.
Of course you did.
And he's like, don't do that stupid crap again, you freaking dumb rookie. It's like, yes, sir, sorry about that. Never did it again. And it was stupid. But, you know, he could have dinged me up. He could have fired me. He could have
Done many things.
He could have done a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
But being called a stupid-ass rookie hurt my pride big enough that I noted it very well and certainly never did that again. And I think he understood that guy wasn't being exactly honest. His story was I just drove up beside him and shot him in the finger for no reason.
Wow.
And so I think that lieutenant at that time was reasonable and, you know, evaluated the facts and chewed my butt on the phone a little bit, and I never did it again. And in this day and time, I think people think or assume we got to drop the hammer on everyone, and that's not how you grow young people. That's not how you teach and influence young people all the time, is by hammering them.
That's right. Flipping the bird.
Yeah.
Interesting you say that, and it's a good story because, you know, I'm constantly on YouTube and watching reels on social media. I want to say, and of course I don't know what agency or what state this is, but there was actually a traffic stop where the person pulled them over because they actually gave them the bird. They flipped them off. They gave them the middle finger. And it just goes beyond me to think that, wow, we're really pulling people over because you got so butthurt about them giving you the finger. Now, as silly as they may sound, let me kind of compare and contrast this. When did this happen? What year?
Probably 1995.
Okay, 1995, right? And fast forward to 2024, if something right now we're in the same circumstances, and I'm just asking for your opinion, do you believe that it could be handled the same way or maybe different?
In this day and time,
Correct.
I think absolutely it could be handled the same way.
Yeah.
But we have swung to a little bit of overreaction, and I don't think a lot of agencies would handle it that way. But I'm a huge proponent, and it's probably military background and probably being raised by cops and military. Not everything requires a day off or a written, documented discipline in your file. Calling somebody in, sitting them down, going, "Hey, you idiot, what were you thinking? Let's work through this." I had several of those conversations where I would prefer to have had probably a day off or a written reprimand than the discussion that was had with me as a young person, but it was very effective, and it didn't damage my career by having, some document in my file that didn't need to be there. We see that a lot with accidents. If somebody's being negligent and reckless in their car and damaging city's property, the taxpayers' property, we need to take action on it. But if somebody is, by God, trying to catch a real bad guy and damages a police car, do you ding somebody really trying to catch a bad guy and take them off the street? I think you have to weigh facts, and sometimes we lose common sense to grow people, to grow these people, and feel like we discipline to please the community, and the community may not necessarily agree always.
I'm definitely in agreement with you. I think we miss the train sometimes when it comes to imposing discipline. Not everything requires a suspension or even a formal, full-blown investigation.
Or the verbal counseling that is written onto a document and goes permanently in your file.
Yeah.
Well, that's a written document. That's not a verbal.
It wasn't verbal, but you told me it was, but it's not.
But it's on a document that's permanent.
Yeah, I sometimes, for example, I know the Tyreek Hill incident, for example.
Yeah.
Given the circumstances, and we can talk about everything that happened on that incident. My point is that one way to impose discipline would be, hey, look, if you work overtime details at the stadium, your motorcycle detail, then hit him in the pockets and say, hey, man, you know what? You're not going to work for like 3 months or this whole season. You're not working.
Yep.
And then that's probably going to take an effect. And you're right.
That's going to absolutely affect some people. You
absolutely.
Start affecting their
pockets.
livelihood.
Yeah, 100%. And before we move on to the next segment, I couldn't agree with you more. We do a better job at demoralizing the accused, which has an impact on the entire department, which is why I asked you in Garland PD, and I understand you said it was like 400 plus, a couple of hundred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably 360.
Yeah, but even in the hundreds, it still has a major impact because everybody kind of knows. And so, and again, one of several reasons to have this podcast and have these conversations. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. Let me ask you this, Clint. If you're in a room full of sergeants and they're getting ready to begin their assignment in internal affairs, what's the one thing you want them to know about their job? What do you think that is?
I would say treat every one of those officers first. Think about if it was your son or your daughter, how you treat that. If that was your son or daughter coming in that may have done something wrong or is falsely accused and you have to address it, do you want them to be treated honestly, with respect, ethically? Be a human first. Be a human first.
Do you describe this treatment because you have had firsthand knowledge that perhaps we don't as an IA investigator?
Yeah. My first incident at Plano, I was treated just about like I was a sex offender. And I actually thought the allegations were so crazy, I thought they were actually pranking me. Like they were going to bust in with a camera or, come in the room laughing, we got you, rookie, messing with me.
Hazing. You thought it was a hazing type of issue.
Yeah, or a joke.
Or a joke.
Prank or something. And I was pretty much treated like I was a sex offender during that. But I travel the state. We have 34,000 members that we represent in Texas, and I deal with the good, the bad, and the ugly of how people are treated and mistreated, retaliated on, weaponized. IA is weaponized. You know, I don't like you. Or we had one instance where chief wasn't being a good leader, and an officer's wife posted about it on social media, so they disciplined the officer. Opened an IA on him and disciplined him for it. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's some wives out there that are spitballs and fireballs. I'm not sure, Chief, if you want to come to the house and control my wife, go ahead and give it a go. But I don't control what she puts on Facebook. I just think there's some overreach, maybe over prosecution. And I think being professional first, being a human, remembering, you know, Eddie Garcia, the chief, and retiring from Dallas, he said, I'm a cop first. And I told city council when they hired me, I'm a cop first, then I'm the chief. If that's not what you're looking for, I'm not the right person.
Right.
And he stood by that his whole time in Dallas. He's a cop first, then he's a chief.
Yeah.
And I think that'll get you a long way.
No, I agree. I wanted to ask you, and you kind of already just touched on it, is the fact that it's the treatment. That's what you first said when I asked you about a room full of sergeants. Hey, treat them with respect. Would it be fair to say that my favorite quote's from one of my guests, the punishment's not the penalty. The punishment is the process.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, during your time at TMPA, can you kind of share with us how some of your members have been treated, where, and you just touched on it, it wasn't really necessary. I guess a better question would be, do you think that's because of lack of competency or the actual practice of internal affairs? Or what do you think?
I think consistent training would be helpful. When you have 2,800 agencies in Texas and you have 5,000 officer agencies, and we have a lot of like 3 officer agencies.
Wow, that we were talking about that.
You have to have some sort of consistency. And is internal affairs at an agency in far west or east Texas at a very rural agency, are they prepared to thoroughly, professionally investigate very serious allegations that may have public consequence, end up on CNN, to go through and handle that? And I don't mean that as a knock on the agency or the person that may be doing them.
Right.
But that's a significant responsibility that you place on someone to investigate their peer. And I think the rank structure is important as well. In some agencies, investigator may be a silver badge, so they're investigating their peers. If you make them rank, now when I go in to talk to you, not only are you IA, you're a lieutenant. I'm a silver badge talking to a lieutenant and IA.
Yeah.
And that's why I say be a human first. I was very blessed at Garland. I was never, ever mistreated. I never watched people get abused by our internal affairs. It was always with integrity, veracity, common sense. I think common sense is not very common anymore sometimes. But I think equal training with those sergeants is you're being given a huge responsibility. Sometimes more important than the chief's job.
Yeah.
Take that job serious.
Very well said. Let's do a trip down memory lane. How many years did you end up doing?
22 total in retirement.
How long you been retired, man?
It'll be 11 years next month.
22 years.
It means I'm old, or I started when I was 8.
Yeah. If I had a crystal ball, right, or I put you in a time capsule and put you back in Garland PD, tell me about that one job that you wish you had, but you never had an opportunity to work it, if any.
I don't. There's not. There's nothing I would do. I stayed a silver badge. I did most of my career as a detective. I got to help on some cool cases. I worked some crazy cases. at times was pushed to promote. And at that point in my career, I enjoyed being a detective. I don't think there's anything I would change.
Good, good, good. Yeah, some people, um, not people, some of the guests kind of refer to, I wish I worked SWAT. I wanted to be a SWATologist, and
I will self admit I tried out for SWAT 3 times. I'm not built for speed. I'm built for comfort. So I never made our SWAT team, and after 3 times and counseling and crying in my beer, I decided I was never going to be on SWAT because I'm just fat and slow.
You see, I knew SWAT. It was coming. It always, and it's appealing. It's great work. It's, the companionship, the camaraderie, the
Yes.
training, and like you said, the incidents are just there are experiences that you can take all the way to the grave and
Yep.
will last you a lifetime. Let's move on to an IA story. I know you kind of shared a couple, but let me ask you this: from the capacity of your role in TMPA, or even your role we haven't even spoken about you being elected as the president of Texas of the Fraternal Order of Police. Talk to me about an IA-related incident or something that we can learn or get some takeaways that perhaps the audience can kind of grab and say, you know what, I can see that being an issue or not.
Yeah, so I think speaking to officers, young officers that are listening, is understanding what internal affairs is and is not. There's always, like in a critical incident, there's parallel investigations. There's an administrative and a criminal. And young officers oftentimes don't understand that although those they feel similar, they're not always the same. They may misunderstand the difference between Miranda and Garrity.
Okay.
Compelled questioning versus non-compelled questioning. So I think it's important to understand what the roles in your department are. The first time you want to understand that is not when they're calling you in.
Yeah.
I think you need to educate yourself. And I think the public, it's important for the public to understand in internal affairs what their role is and is not also. And that there's a grave misunderstanding of qualified immunity. And people think, well, he'll never get in trouble with IA because he has qualified immunity, or he'll never get fired. And there's a really large perverted misunderstanding of what qualified immunity is. And IA's role is purely administrative. It's to determine, did they violate policies within that agency? And it has nothing to do oftentimes with qualified immunity and a lot of other factors. And I think through TV and through other things, there's a lot of misunderstandings.
Yeah, social media and the whole line.
Yep.
Part of your job in work for TMPA is to respond to these critical incidents, OIS is being the most popular, right, because they happen quite often, officer-involved shootings. Let me kind of fire some questions at you in terms of, and you're about to see how different Texas is to the state of California. The first and foremost, what really stood out to me the most is in the state of Texas, there is agencies, right? We talked about this yesterday, where if you are involved in an IA, I'm accused of all these allegations, and I'm getting ready to begin my compelled interview with IA, I'm not allowed any representation. That is just beyond me. I just want to know, when did this all start? And
Texas is a right-to-work state. We do have civil service agencies, but as a part of civil service, you do not always have the right to have an attorney present during a compelled statement. We do have many agencies that have bargaining, whether it's meet and confer, collective bargaining, and they'll negotiate into the contract at times to have those rights. And then like the agency I retired from, Garland, we did a police officer Bill of Rights in the 90s, and we put in there that when called in, I have the right to have a witness present, whether it's an attorney, a peer, to ensure, that I'm not verbally abused, that I'm not mistreated, that I'm not. And it's a very common sense thing. I guess it's a scary thing to some agencies. My opinion, if you're a leader and it scares you for someone to have someone sitting in there witnessing what you're doing, that should concern the public even more.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing everything proper and on the up and up, let's all be out in the open.
Yeah. What's the big deal?
It's kind of like people say, well, if you need an attorney, you must be covering something up. And I laugh and I tell them, every incident the police are involved in nowadays is on 15 different cameras, whether it's body camera, in-car camera,
social media.
7 people standing around with cameras. There's nothing to cover up.
Yeah.
You work through the process. That's just part of it.
Right.
Because it's documented. Everything just about is documented 15 times in today's. And if you're doing things legit, let's do it out in the open. Let's do it. Let's take care of it.
Yeah, but let's not forget about how we preach transparency, right?
Yes.
Don't we? Don't we tell the public we're going to be very transparent. We're going to come out with these assembly bills and let you know about these critical incidents within 45 days. You're going to know about this, and that. But yet, hold on a second, we can't be transparent amongst ourselves.
Yep.
Why don't we have an internal affairs podcast so that we can be transparent?
And it's fascinating. Before you picked me up this morning, I was listening to Bridging the Divide podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Chief Eddie Garcia retired from San Jose, California. He's been the chief in Dallas for the last 4.5, I think, years. Right before you picked me up, he is saying, part of the way you embrace the community is you embrace your associations, because everybody is a stakeholder. Everybody's a stakeholder. And if you have an adversarial relationship with the community, with your officers, with your associations, you're set up to fail.
Yeah.
And I think part of why Chief Garcia's been so successful is transparency. He'll step right in front of a crowd and tell them, we screwed up. We didn't do it right this time. We're going to do it better.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to fix it. Or that force wasn't beautiful, but by God, my officers did the right thing. It was justified. And I'm sorry that you don't like it, but my officers did the right thing.
That's just the way it goes.
And that's sometimes making sausage is ugly.
Yeah. Eat crow.
But he never had an adversarial relationship with our community, with our associations. I mean, in any community. He embraced not just the Hispanic community, but the Black community, the Asian community, every part of Dallas, and the associations. And he said all of them are stakeholders. You have to have they're all family.
Yeah.
You don't mistreat one of them and expect the whole conglomerate to work. Man, I think it's beautifully said. And I think podcasts like this, communicating, helping people understand, whether it's a young officer that's new or whether it's citizens. I know a lot of citizens watch this that aren't in the police world. Help them understand it, or let's communicate. Let's have a conversation about it.
Let's break bread.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And to your point, what stands out to me just based on experience is if let's just say I'm your attorney, Clint, and you're getting ready to walk into your compelled interview, and I tell you, okay, Clint, we discussed this, you're well-versed on the incident, and two things. You walk in there, and for whatever reason, you just have, like, diarrhea in the mouth and just say more than what is needed.
Yeah.
Not to say that you're covering anything up. It's just you need some guidance.
Yeah.
Especially as a young cop, you don't know. You could say a whole bunch of stuff that might not even be pertinent or related to the actual matter that's being investigated. 1, 2 is what I don't know is how competent that actual IA investigator is. That's
true.
One of probably my biggest, I wouldn't say fear, but biggest challenge is I don't know what questions you're asking, and the questions that you are asking, are they legitimate? Are they clear? Or are they? Is there enough questions to actually flesh out all the details of this particular incident? Because here's the deal: when we teach a Savage training group and internal affairs courses, we always tell everybody, be the smartest guy in the room.
Yes.
You know? I mean, wouldn't you agree? I'm sure you had a situation where someone called you and said, "Hey, man, dude, this cop went in there and he told, they asked him about A and B, and this dude just went and told this whole story that probably had nothing to do with the actual incident. What do you think?
Yeah, and when you have an allegation against you, and oftentimes if it's false, you're a bit defensive. You're a bit frustrated. Maybe you've been on admin leave.
Yeah.
Or you've been told you have an IA, but we can't tell you anything else and get back to work. So now you're driving around trying to serve the community with, okay, well, what's going on? What's the deal? Stress builds. And I laugh when I hear sometimes IA investigators or chiefs go, well, they don't need an attorney in there with them. All right, well, let's flip the roles. If it's you that ends up, are you going to want one with you? Well, I'm not the one under us. No, I'm asking. If someday you end up in the hot seat, would you want an attorney sitting there? Well, I'm not going to debate that with you. Okay, well, question answered. Thank you.
Yeah, totally, 100%. Last question, in your experience, I think I know the answer to this. Is there a double standard?
Meaning?
The difference between punishment or allegations being brought up against the rank and file as opposed to command staff?
Often, yes. I think, yeah, and I don't know. I think it is.
Well, I can tell in California, yes.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is, but there is a lot of do as I say and not as I do.
There you go.
And I don't know if it's institutional or if it's a byproduct of I've got a little bit of metal on my collar, and I don't know. But it does seem institutional. It does seem across the board. There is often do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, oftentimes on an off-duty incident, whether it's a bar fight or domestic violence or a DUI, if that happens to the rank and file, and the same similar circumstances happens to command staff, from my experience, it's just not my experience. I can tell you 70-plus guests have come here could agree that they are handled different.
And I'm not saying all,
No.
certainly, but one of the problems, too, that we see with the public, with the community, with mainstream media is every incident that occurs, they want to blame it on that silver badge that made the mistake.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when we dive into it, the failures, it starts at the top. And every organization is a mirrored image, a direct reflection of the leader. And perfect example, I referenced Chief Garcia a while ago. Dallas their morale was in the trash. The community didn't support them. Crime was through the roof. And they say one person, well, Michael Jordan did, but one person can't carry a team.
Yeah.
And Eddie Garcia came in almost single-handedly and has turned Dallas around. The community loves the police. The morale is probably higher than it's been in 20 or 30 years. Their retention is improving. Violent crime is down. And the only thing that changed is Eddie Garcia. Yeah. And that's a trickle-down effect. That has an effect on everyone. And you went from having silver badges saying, screw this place, this is a horrible place, to literally emotional that their chief is leaving them. You don't see that. And to the point of one person can have an effect on all of that.
Yeah.
And so across the board, I said institutional, no, but it does seem common.
Yeah, and I just want to also be clear that when we are having these conversations about discipline, about these scenarios, if you will, it's a very small population.
Absolutely. Yep.
Completely. I mean, the fraction's like 0.0001%, but we can both agree that transparency is needed, and that's the reason why we're having these conversations.
And that's a great point. I did an interview this morning regarding race relations and the manipulation of statistics regarding police shootings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a micro percentage based on the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of police contacts that occur every single day.
Uh-huh.
The amount of force that is used or deadly force that is used, it's such a micro, but those are the only ones that get mainstream media attention.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, internal affairs. I forgot to even ask you when we first met. What did you think? Like,
I wasn't sure. I didn't know if you were coming to try and give me some days off, or I didn't know. I was a little scared. I was going to have my attorney present. When you arrived.
another prank. You thought it was going to be another prank.
I had an attorney hidden in the room next door in case you started questioning me.
Yeah, and you know what? It gets sensationalized, is what it does.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because I'm a true believer that these conversations need to happen, and we're making it happen, bro. I really appreciate that. Worst incident in your career?
Probably somewhat police related. Held my partner in my lap in '08. We weren't at work. We were hunting together in a hunting accident, and held my partner in my lap as he died.
Wow.
About 5 hours from the station, and literally in the middle of nowhere of West Texas, and had his son with us, and not exactly duty related, but he was my best friend at the department. We worked together in CID, and was kind of a trajectory changer for my career.
Wow. Was it a, if you don't mind me asking, was it naturally, or was it a
Hunting accident.
kind of like it was? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Hunting wasn't the same ever since.
No, I've not really hunted since then.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
That was November 1st, 2008.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that, Clint. Let's move on to something better. Let's go with, give me that one arrest. Tell me about that significant arrest that had to happen, or that you really remember in your career.
Working a cold case that was 17 years old. The case was 17 years old. Horrible case. Group of bad guys went looking to pay back a gentleman. He wasn't there, so they shot all of his family. And the case lingered for 17 years. I wasn't the lead, but worked on it a lot. Traveled to Memphis working on the case, and ended up getting everyone arrested, identified, arrested, convicted. The children that were shot lived. Got to give them closure. I maintain contact with them to this day, and that's been probably 12 or 14 years ago.
Wow.
Still maintain communication and contact with them today, and giving those kids closure. Well, they're adults now, but giving those kids closure was probably the best arrest I guess I've had.
Yeah, no, totally. Definitely an impact.
Yes.
I can tell, I can feel it, man. Hey, before we wrap it up, let's talk about TMPA. What's it all about? How did it all start? And why a podcast?
So TMPA, we provide legal protection, legislative efforts to Texas law enforcement. We have about 34,000 members. One of the things I respect most about the organization is always trying to be the tip of the spear, trying to do things. How do we communicate to the public? How do we communicate to our members, legislators? And came up with the idea for the Blue Grit podcast. I was a blind, stumbled forward, failed forward, had no idea what we were doing. We're off the ground, I think 75 or 8 episodes in, and it's been good. I like looking at the analytics, because I do believe we have a lot of law enforcement listeners, but looking at the analytics, we have a lot of people in Australia and New Zealand and Canada listening, and I think communication and relationships is the foundation. We could have a lot better world and country, if there's more communication going on.
Absolutely.
And so Blue Grit's off the ground, kind of a play on words of True Grit.
Yeah.
And we have failed forward, stumbling to success, figuring out what we're doing, and glad to be here.
That's awesome, man. Hey, before I just got a question about your duties as a working figure, if you will, of TMPA. What are the major challenges? I was going to say, if any. Of course you do. You got many challenges. What do you think it's the next big step for TMPA to keep moving up that ladder?
For Texas law enforcement, the big thing is to unite all Texas law enforcement. We have 34,000 and change members. There's about 80,000 cops in Texas.
Wow.
And we all want the same flavor of pie. In fact, we all want the same slice of pie.
Right.
And why we want to get everybody working together and to collaborate together.
Mm-hmm.
Because if our desires are the same, there's no reason to not be walking arm in arm for those desires. But the other thing is to continue. The political world is changing, probably more polarized than it's ever been. We have to be very diligent to continue to educate legislators on truth.
Yeah.
Because they only know what they know, and oftentimes they're fed bad information.
Yes.
Is to continue to educate them on their information they need to know to be able to legislate effectively, but also be good citizens, be involved in the community, have conversations like these to continue to ensure the community knows why we're here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, we definitely need representation when you walk into your compelled interview. That to me sticks out a lot.
Yeah.
We're lucky here in California. And I wish you the best, man. Any help you need, you know how to get a hold of me.
Was honored to get the invite, honored to be here. I'm going to steal some of the weather and take it back with me on the plane.
Absolutely. Well, look, before we wrap it up, I'm going to leave the floor up to you. Any advice you have for anyone who is wanting to be a cop, man, wanting to be a law enforcement officer? What kind of advice should you have?
Don't go into it blindly. Research, find an area, find a geographic area you want to work in. Understand, do you want to be in a sheriff's department working for an elected official where that changes frequently, where your boss changes frequently? Do you want to be a street cop in a police department, U.S. Marshals, federal? After you identify that geographically, physically, do I want to be in Southern California? Do I want to be in North Texas? And then do your homework on departments, because not every agency is the same.
Yeah.
Their benefits, their retirement, their culture of how they do police work are very, very, very different. Even neighboring agencies that butt up to each other. I went into it blindly and landed on my feet at Garland, thankfully. But a young person looking to get into it, I admire you wanting to strap on a badge and gun and protect your community.
Yeah.
But do your due diligence first, and do yourself a favor by investing research and understanding what is their retirement, their pension, what is their medical. Does the community like the police there?
Yeah. That's good, bro. Hey, man, I'm due for a visit to God's country.
We'll look forward to it.
Please ensure there's a cowboy hat and some boots for me.
I got you.
I don't have a pair. I don't wear them. But for you, my man, I'll definitely do that. And look, on that note, like always, we're done. Please be safe out there, and don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.